making longer sentences in German to sound more efficient, to sound more proficient and more intelligent as well. So this is part 2 of a video that we had a couple of weeks ago on this channel. This time it's a bit more advanced, more advanced conjunction and connecting adverbs. So let's take a look. The first sentence is Es regnet, wir gehen spazieren. I want you to think of a suitable linking word before I show you. So, es regnet, wir gehen spazieren. There is some element of surprise here. It's not what you normally do when it rains. So, it's raining, we're going for a walk. If you wanted to connect these two sentences, maybe therefore or that's why wouldn't be a good match. How about although? In German, although, that's obwohl. Exactly. Well done. So, wir gehen spazieren, obwohl es regnet. So, obwohl is a subjunction in German. It means that it introduces a subclause. So, das ist ein Nebensatz, obwohl es regnet. And in subclauses, as you know, the verb goes to the last position in German. So, obwohl es regnet. Second option here would be an adverb, and that's trotzdem. We'll talk about trotzdem in a while, but if you want to use trotzdem here, you would have to swap around the clauses. So in this case, you would start with Es regnet, trotzdem gehen wir spazieren. So in that case, you would change the order of the sentence elements. But we'll talk about trotzdem in a while. Obwohl is different, grammatically speaking. It introduces a subclause. English, although. Great. Next sentence. Ich habe kein Geld. Ich kaufe das nicht. I don't have any money. I'm not buying this. So this time I want you to think of an adverb that we can use. In this case, there is no element of surprise. It's the normal thing, a normal consequence. And for normal consequences, we can use therefore, that's why in English. In German, you can use darum. So, ich habe kein Geld, darum kaufe ich das nicht. And we have a couple of synonyms in German for this word, and these are deshalb, deswegen, also. So we could have said, ich habe kein Geld, also kaufe ich das nicht as well. Now, the important distinction here is that these words, darum, deshalb, deswegen, also, and also trotzdem on the last sentence, these words are adverbs. They don't have fixed positions. Their usual positions is position 1 or position 3. And the second position they cannot take because that's of course reserved for the verb. In this case, kaufe. Darum kaufe ich das nicht. But we could have started with a subject as well. So, ich kaufe das darum nicht. That's also fine. But you can always start with these adverbs, and it's quite common to do so. Now I know what you're wondering right now. How about weil? Yeah, weil is also a good option here, but the grammar would be a bit different again, because weil is like obwohl, grammatically speaking, and these words, darum, deshalb, deswegen, also, they're like trotzdem, grammatically speaking, meaning that weil, just like obwohl, introduces a subclause. So we could have said, ich kaufe das nicht, weil ich kein Geld habe. With weil you give the reason, and the reason for not buying it is the fact that you don't have any money. So, ich kaufe das nicht, weil ich kein Geld habe. Habe at the end because weil introduces a subclause. Great, let's continue now. Sie macht Sport, sie bleibt gesund. She does sport or she works out and she stays healthy. Now we could use a reason again. She stays healthy because she works out, but let's use something a bit different here. Let's use a purpose here, an aim, an objective. In English that would be so that or in order to. So in German, what would that look like? We can use the word damit. And it's always important to know, is this word an adverb rather, or is it a subjunction and introduces a subclause? This one introduces a subclause, just like weil and obwohl. So, sie macht Sport, damit sie gesund bleibt. She works out so that she stays healthy. So we have a subclause again. That's why the verb bleibt is on the last position. Damit is not an adverb. It's a subjunction. It introduces a subclause. Another option here would be zu plus infinitive, and that's very close to the English in order to. Grammar is quite different here. Meaning is the same. So, sie macht Sport, gesund zu bleiben. Now this one, gesund zu bleiben, is not a subclause, because in a subclause we have a subject. Here there is no subject. In a subclause we have a finite verb form, a conjugated verb form. Here we don't have that. We just have zu and then the infinitive. So this is also a great option here, but careful, no subject, and you need the infinitive, don't conjugate it. So, gesund zu bleiben, in order to stay in shape, in order to stay healthy rather. Great. Das ist der Mann, hat mir geholfen. That's the man, he helped me. Now this is a bit clumsy to have two short sentences like this. We can connect these two. How would you do that? I know what you're thinking. You're thinking Relativsatz. And yeah, you're right. There will be a great option here. And the answer is, das ist der Mann, der mir geholfen hat. This is the man who helped me. The important thing here is that relative clauses, they always start with a relative pronoun, der, die, das, den, dem, and so on and so on. And they also are subclauses, which means the verb has to be on the last position. Der mir geholfen hat. Last position, hat. Great. Hat hart gearbeitet, bekam eine Beförderung. He worked hard, he got a promotion. So bekam is the past tense form, the Präteritum past tense form of bekommen, to get, to receive. Here what we can use to connect the two sentences is a consequence. So he worked so hard that he got a promotion. So the promotion is the logical consequence of his hard work. In German, that's so dass. Hat hart gearbeitet, so dass eine Beförderung bekam. So this time it doesn't show his plan, his aim, his objective. That was damit. It's a bit different. Here it just shows a consequence. He worked hard, consequence, he got the promotion. Sometimes we can split up the so and the das. So the das stays behind the comma, but the so we can put in the first part in front of an adjective or like here an adverb. So, hat so hart gearbeitet, dass eine Beförderung bekam would be also a great option here. Perfect. If you're serious about learning German, you should definitely check out my 27-hour-long Beginners A1 course. Join over 1,000 students that master the A1 German level with me. All details down below. It's the first link in the video description. Wir hatten kein Auto, wir nahmen den Bus. We didn't have a car, we took the bus. So basically there are two options here. First, we can use one of the adverbs that we've seen previously on a previous slide. Deshalb, darum, deswegen, also. That's also possible. That would give us, wir hatten kein Auto, deshalb nahmen wir den Bus. Nahmen, by the way, also Präteritum of the verb nehmen. The perfect tense would also work great here, and that's wir haben den Bus genommen. That's also fine, by the way. So one option here to connect them would be an adverb again, deshalb, darum, deswegen, also. But the other option would be a subclause, and there are two subjunctions here. One is da, a bit more formal, and one is weil, the more standard one. So what would that look like? Da wir kein Auto hatten, nahmen wir den Bus. Or weil wir kein Auto hatten, nahmen wir den Bus. So here we are starting with a subclause. The first part is a subclause, and that's why we have the verb at the end, hatten. But we don't have to do that. We don't have to start with the subclause. We can also start with the other part. So, wir nahmen den Bus, da or weil wir kein Auto hatten. That's also fine. You can always start with the main clause or with the subclause. Both are great options. Sie hat keinen Führerschein. Sie fährt nicht. She doesn't have a driver's license. She doesn't drive. So that's the normal thing to do. There's no surprise here. So we're not going to use obwohl, the subjunction, or trotzdem, the adverb. Here we need the other category. So we need weil, again, weil or da plus subclause, or these adverbs again. Let's use one of these adverbs again. Deswegen, for example, sie hat keinen Führerschein, deswegen fährt sie nicht. So she doesn't have a driver's license, therefore, or that's why, or thus, she doesn't drive. We can also use the other ones, darum, deshalb, also. Next sentence is, ich habe ein Buch, es ist sehr spannend. I have a book, it's very exciting. In this case, we can of course use again, with strategy, the relative clause. So, ich habe ein Buch, das sehr spannend ist. Again, these are also subclauses, so make sure you put the verb, in this case ist, at the end of it. In this case, we can even make something a bit, simpler maybe. We can just put the adjective in front of Buch. Ich habe ein sehr spannendes Buch. That's also fine in this scenario. Er spart Geld. Er kauft ein Auto. He's saving money. He buys a car. Let's say that this is his goal again, his goal, his aim, his objective. So we need something like either damit plus the subclause or zu plus infinitive. So let's do both now. Let's start with zu plus infinitive, in order to buy a car. Er spart Geld, ein Auto zu kaufen. He's saving money in order to buy a car. Or we can use damit, so that. Er spart Geld, damit ein Auto kauft, would also be fine, but in many cases we want the modal verb können in here. So it's zu plus the verb, or it's damit plus modal verb plus the other verb. So with damit we often use können. They tend to work hand in hand, so that he can buy a car. It's the same in English. He's saving money so that he can buy a car. Alright, now the next sentence. Es ist sehr kalt. Wir sitzen draußen. It's very cold. We're sitting outside. Here again, it's not normal. When it's cold, you want to be inside. When it's nice and warm, you want to be outside. So in this case, we will either want to use although, and that's obwohl in German, plus the subclause, or we can also use the adverb trotzdem. Let's do both again. Let's start with trotzdem. Es ist sehr kalt. Trotzdem sitzen wir draußen. The first part here is the reason, but here it's a counter reason. It's the reason why it's strange. And the second part has the unexpected consequence, sitting outside. Es ist sehr kalt. Trotzdem sitzen wir draußen. It's very cold, but we're still sitting outside. So still is a good translation, or nonetheless. Nonetheless, we're sitting outside. Now the other option would be although. In German, that's obwohl. Here we have a subclause, so the verb will go last position. Obwohl es sehr kalt ist, sitzen wir draußen. But the important thing to note here is that obwohl and trotzdem, they're not in the same part. They're in the other parts, they're in the opposite parts. Obwohl is used with the reason, or it's also called the counter reason sometimes, the reason why it's strange. And trotzdem is used in the other part, in the unexpected consequence. But that's again the same as in English. Although it's cold, or in the other scenario, still we're sitting outside. Nonetheless, we're sitting outside. Okay guys, now if you want to review all the super important basic A1 vocab and grammar, you can check out the first link down below. It's a link to my 27-hour-long A1 course, and there'll be a discount for you YouTube watchers. It's the first link down below. See you in the next video.